was sent down to the countryside. My parents couldn't bear the thought of my older sister suffering in such a harsh place. In a panic, they rushed to marry her off to a young army officer. In our previous life, after my sister married the officer, his entire family was also exiled to the same rural labor farm. In the end, she died from childbirth complications on that remote piece of land. When I opened my eyes, my sister and I had both returned to the very month before the relocation happened. In the living room, our parents were deep in discussion, eager to get my sister married off before the government issued the order. "Abby, it's not that we don't feel bad for you," Dad said, "but your sister's health is just too fragile. The farm work is way too heavy for her. There's no way she'd survive it." Mom added, "That's right, Abby. You're a lot stronger than your sister. Your father and I talked it over. We've decided to marry your sister off as soon as possible, and you'll come with us to the countryside." Before I could say anything, my sister suddenly pushed me aside. "Mom, Dad, I want to go to the countryside with you. Let my little sister marry into the Han family instead." My parents were shocked, but I was still holding her soft, pale hands, one on each side, trying to talk her out of it. "Lily, honey, I know you don't want to leave us," Mom said gently, "but the countryside is no place for someone like you. Be a good girl and let your sister come with us. You go marry into the Han family." Dad followed up, "Your mother is right. The Han family has a military background. No one would dare stir up trouble with them. Han Samuel is already a company commander. With him protecting you, you'll be fine. Once you join him on base, life won't be hard." Lily gave me a long look, then pulled Mom and Dad aside to talk privately. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but when they came back, their attitude had completely changed. "Abby, your sister loves you so much. She's worried you'll suffer in the countryside with us, so she's decided to let you take her place and marry into the Han family instead," Mom explained. Dad added, "Yes, she's even giving up her fiancé so you won't have to suffer. Abby, your mother and I agreed that once you marry into the Han family and follow Han Samuel to his base, you'll have everything you need, so we're not giving you anything from home. All the savings and valuables will stay with your sister as compensation." Listening to how obviously biased they were, I couldn't help but smile. "If marrying into the Han family means enjoying a good life," I said, "then let Lily have it. I've been used to hardship since I was little anyway. I'll go to the countryside with you." "No!" Lily suddenly broke down and screamed. I looked at her in surprise. "Why?" But she stammered, unable to get a single word out. I knew then, she remembered everything too. In our past life, our parents didn't want Lily to suffer with them on the farm, so they planned everything to protect her. First, they announced in the newspaper that they were cutting ties with her to avoid implicating her when the relocation came. Then, they left her the house, the savings, and anything of value. Finally, they arranged her marriage into the Han family. The Hans had been a military family for 2 generations. Han's father was already a senior commander, and Han Samuel had made company commander at a young age. My parents believed that with the Han family's protection and all that money, Lily would live a worry-free life. But what they didn't expect was that shortly after we were sent to the countryside, Han's father was framed by a subordinate, and the entire Han family was also exiled to the harshest and most remote labor farm. Everything our parents left Lily, money, property, valuables, was lost. Later, Lily got pregnant on the farm. Her body was too weak, the environment too cold and harsh. She went into labor in the freezing, hungry conditions and never made it back. She died giving birth on that isolated farm. After Lily died, our parents blamed it all on me. They called me bad luck, said I stole her nutrition in the womb, making her frail and weak, leading to her death during childbirth. They said I was selfish, that I went with them to the countryside to enjoy life, while my sister was sent to the worst, most unforgiving place. But did I really enjoy life? During those years in the countryside, just to keep my parents alive, I, once the daughter of a government official, had to transform into a fierce, desperate girl who would fight tooth and nail to survive. When our parents were bullied by the villagers, I grabbed a hoe and fought back with everything I had. I ended up beaten black and blue. The worst time, they broke 3 of my ribs. But I didn't let it go. I bit off half of that man's ear. After that, none of them ever dared to mess with our family again. Dad had too much pride to collect manure or chop firewood. Mom had been waited on by nannies her whole life and didn't even know how to cook or wash clothes. It was me who worked myself half to death every day in the fields to earn labor points and feed the three of us. At night, I'd come back to the cowshed and cook, do the laundry, haul water, and chop wood. In winter, I'd wash clothes in the freezing river. During my period, the cramps were so painful, I thought I'd die. But I still had to push through and go to the fields, cook and clean, because if I didn't, no one else would. And if no one worked, we'd all go hungry. That's how I survived those 5 years. Barely. My body was completely ruined. But in my parents' eyes, just because I didn't die on the farm like Lily did, I became an unforgivable sinner. My mother practically wished I'd died just to redeem Lily. My father, desperate to climb the social ladder, married me off to some old official 20 years older than me. He'd already buried 3 wives. In my past life, my body had been broken by the years on the farm. I couldn't have children. That man beat and abused me constantly. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore. I bought a packet of rat poison and died with him. But in this life, since Lily thinks going to the countryside with our parents means enjoying a good life, so be it. I agreed to my parents' plan. I'd marry into the Han family in Lily's place. But I had one condition. The family's money and belongings couldn't all go with Lily to the farm. I wanted half. The moment the words left my mouth, both Mom and Dad's faces changed. Mom glared at me, her tone icy. Just like a girl, married off, and suddenly only thinking about her husband's house. You're not even married yet, and you're already eyeing our things. And to think your father and I were counting on you to help Lily after you marry into the Han family, to support this family. Clearly, we were wrong. Dad's face darkened. Don't be greedy, he snapped. Your sister gave up her fiancé so you could stay in the city and live in comfort, and now you're fighting her for our belongings? As I listened to them scolding me without an ounce of compassion, Lily's lips curled slightly, though her voice was sweet and understanding. Mom, Dad, if Abby wants it, then let her have it. As long as I get to stay with you both, I don't need anything else. My parents were moved to tears and pulled her into a hug. When they turned to look at me, their eyes were full of disgust, and their voices were sharp with coldness. Your sister gave up her fiancé for you. You're the one who gets to stay in the city and enjoy a good life. What more could you possibly want? That's final. We'll give you 500 yuan. That'll be your dowry. Everything else will stay with your sister as compensation. 500 yuan. I lowered my head, a bitter laugh rising silently in my chest. Dad had been a high-ranking official for years. Mom was the daughter of a wealthy capitalist. When she married Dad, it was said her dowry alone included hundreds of thousands worth of jewelry, antiques, calligraphy, and paintings. Now they were leaving everything to Lily, and all I was worth to them was a measly 500 yuan. I'd always known my parents favored Lily. But hearing it spoken out loud so blatantly, their bias and disdain naked and unapologetic, still felt like a hand tearing my heart in half. The pain was suffocating. Tears spilled down my cheeks without permission. But I told myself, Mom, Dad, these will be the last tears I ever shed for you in this lifetime. I didn't argue. I knew it would be pointless. No matter what I said, I could never compete with the favoritism they had for Lily. And honestly, I was curious. How exactly was Lily planning to protect all those valuables from the same people who had ruined us before? Maybe it was because I was too obedient. Not fighting back, not arguing. Maybe that made my mom feel a trace of guilt toward me. The next day, after Dad left, Mom called me into her room. She secretly handed me 2 thick envelopes. Abby, there's 2,000 yuan in here, along with some ration coupons for grain, cloth, and sugar. Don't blame your dad and me. You're lucky to stay in the city and live a good life. That's all thanks to your sister sacrificing herself for you. We left all the valuables in the house to your sister as a way to help you atone. Atone? Lily was malnourished in the womb. Wasn't that because you, Mom, were too afraid of gaining weight and deliberately starved yourself during pregnancy? Lily voluntarily gave up her engagement to Han Samuel. Wasn't it because in our last life, the Han family was about to be sent down too, and to an even harsher, remote border farm? She wanted me to marry into that family in her place so she could avoid it. She wasn't making a sacrifice. She was pushing me into a pit of fire. So who was the one who really needed to atone? But I still didn't say a word. I just obediently took the 2 envelopes from Mom's hand. Who says there's no way to survive in the most remote corners of the country? In this life, I'm living for myself. I won't carry anyone else's fate. I won't sacrifice myself just to protect Dad and Mom. This time, I'll carve out my own path. Mom, Dad, and Lily were all busy now. I knew Lily must have told them everything from our past life. Dad was pulling every string he could to avoid being sent down again. Mom and Lily were scrambling to hide things around the house. Meanwhile, I took the introduction letter and went alone to the Hahn family. Today was the day our 2 families had agreed to register the marriage. It was almost laughable. My parents were out there doing everything in their power to rewrite Lily's fate, while I, the one about to get married, was left all alone, carrying a shabby little bundle as I walked to the Hahn home. When I showed up at the military compound looking like that, without even a decent outfit for the wedding, Mrs. Hahn stared at me for a moment in surprise. Then a flicker of tenderness crossed her face. She quickly stood up and warmly took my hand. "You must be Abby. We've heard all about you from your parents. They said you've been independent, strong, and sensible since you were little. I just didn't expect your mom and dad to be so bold, letting you come alone to something as important as registering a marriage." I didn't know what Lily had told the Hahn family in the past life, but in this life I had no intention of hiding the truth from my parents. I sat down, took a sip of water, and calmly laid out everything to the Hahns. My dad's afraid he won't be able to avoid being sent down this time, so he wanted me to marry in immediately, as a kind of insurance policy in case he needs a way to come back from all this. It was supposed to be Lily who married into your family, but once my dad realized Mr. Hahn might be sent down too, he panicked. With his high rank, if he's relocated, it'll be to the worst farm. My parents couldn't bear the thought of Lily going with you and suffering, so they decided to have me take her place and marry Samuel instead. Mrs. Hahn, that's the situation. If Samuel doesn't want to marry me, we can cancel the engagement right now. Mrs. Hahn looked utterly shocked. Cancel? Then what would happen to you? I gave a small smile. I've already cut ties with my family. I can register to be sent down as a volunteer. I'll be fine. You don't need to marry me, Hahn Samuel said suddenly. I looked up in surprise and met his eyes, those warm, steady eyes filled with compassion and tenderness. Not a trace of the scorn or disgust I had known so well in my past life. My nose stung, and the tears came before I could stop them. Even a man I just met for the first time could feel sorry for me. But my own parents treated me like disposable garbage, eager to dump me on a stranger and wash their hands of me. Seeing me cry so hard, Mrs. Hahn forgot all about formality. She hurried to sit beside me and wrapped her arms around me, her face full of sorrow. Don't cry, Abby. Don't cry. If your parents don't care about you, we will. You go get the marriage license with Samuel now. Once you marry into this family, we'll be your mom and dad. As she spoke, she gave Hahn Samuel a light slap. What are you still sitting there for? Go get the household registration and introduction letter. Under her urging, it took just half an hour for Samuel and me to complete the marriage registration. When I looked at the certificate, our names, Hahn Samuel and Abby Yao, printed side by side like winners on a diploma, I knew, in this life, I finally had a family of my own. As for my dad, he still didn't escape the fate of being sent down to the farm. What was even more ridiculous was that my mom and Lily's attempt to hide money and valuables got reported by a relative who had long been jealous of our family. In the end, none of the things my parents had left for Lily were preserved. Not a single cent. On top of that, my dad got implicated and was ordered to be sent down to an even harsher labor farm than in our previous life. The day before the relocation, Lily came to see me. She caught sight of me walking out of the military compound in a new cotton jacket, something I just bought. Her eyes burned with resentment. Abby Yao, don't get smug just yet. The Hahn family will be sent down soon too, and to the poorest, farthest, most brutal farm. You'll die out there. You'll never come back this time. I looked at her with pity. I couldn't say for sure whether I would come back alive, but I was certain that with Lily's frail, weak little body, If she went with our parents to the labor farm, there was no way she'd live to see the day they were allowed to return to the city. But why should I warn her? After all, my own sister had never planned to let me survive in the first place. Lily, in the end, between you and me, let's see who gets the last laugh. After my parents and Lily left, the Hahn family and I shut the doors and talked all night. The next morning, father-in-law and Samuel immediately returned to the unit to take care of the necessary formalities. I asked mother-in-law to help gather all the old clothes in the house. Then, we separated the money, ration coupons, and other items like gift vouchers, wrapped them carefully in oiled paper, and sewed them into the linings of the old clothes. As for the jewelry and precious metals, we had them melted down and reshaped into small gold and silver leaves. Mother-in-law and I took everyone's old shoes, carefully opened the soles, sewed the metal leaves inside, and added a thick insole over them. From the outside, it was impossible to tell. Half a month later, the exact time the Hahn family had been sent down in our past life came around. But this time, thanks to my warnings, father-in-law and Samuel had already prepared. Though we still couldn't escape the tide of the era and the entire family had to be relocated, father-in-law managed to have our destination changed. From that desolate, remote logging camp to a small fishing village just over 100 miles from the provincial capital. Only then did I learn that both of my in-laws were originally from the coast. Their families had been fishermen for generations. After we arrived at the fishing village, father-in-law and Samuel joined the villagers on the boats to fish. Mother-in-law and I went out to the shore with the village women to dig for clams and crabs. In this life, I didn't have to suffer the way I did before, drained pale by leech-like family members, forced to plant rice seedlings in the field by day, then come home to cook, clean, haul water, and chop firewood for my parents at night. Father-in-law wasn't like my dad, who held on to his pompous leadership image even after being sent down. He blended in quickly with the village committee, even taught the kids military martial arts. Thanks to his good nature and efforts, we soon moved out of the stinky cowshed. Mother-in-law spent 50 yuan to buy 2 vacant houses in the village, one for the in-laws, one for Samuel and me. It was only after living with Samuel that I realized how much Lily had taken her blessings for granted in our past life. Samuel may not talk much, but there's not a single flaw in him. He's considerate, always rushing to help with chores. He never lets me lift a finger for heavy work like hauling water or chopping wood. Quiet as he seems, he's extremely attentive. When he noticed the cracks on my hands from being in the seawater, he ran to the commune the very next day and bought snow cream and protective oil for both mother-in-law and me. 3 months after being relocated, I found out I was pregnant with Samuel's child. When mother-in-law asked if I wanted to write home to share the good news, I shook my head. What I didn't expect was that even without writing to them, I still received a letter from my parents a few days later. In my past life, right up until the day I died, my parents never stopped praising Lily. But in this life, even though Lily was right there with them, the letter they sent me was filled with complaints about her. Turns out, without a daughter like me, one who worked tirelessly without complaint, life at the labor farm had been absolute misery for them. Just like before, Dad still refused to lower himself to shovel manure or clean the pig bin. He expected Lily to be like me and handle it for him. But Lily couldn't even get near the pig bin without vomiting and bursting into tears. She fainted on the spot. My mom, who had never even held a spatula in her life, couldn't possibly lift a shovel full of pig manure. The result? None of the 3 of them were willing to submit to the farm's labor requirements, and they went 3 whole days without food. The first 3 days weren't so bad. Before leaving, Mom had brought along some biscuits and peach crisps. The 3 of them managed to share those and barely filled their stomachs. But it didn't take long for the snacks to run out. The farm had made it very clear. No work, no food. After 3 days of hunger, my parents and Lily were forced to go out into the fields and work. But Mom had never planted anything in her life. She couldn't even tell rice seedlings from weeds. After a full day of work, she ended up pulling out a whole section of rice shoots, thinking they were weeds. Not only did she fail to earn any labor points, but the farm actually deducted 100 points from their total. Lily, whose health had never been good, only managed to work on a hillside pulling weeds for half a day before collapsing from exhaustion and falling ill. She then had to be waited on hand and foot by Mom. Dad had no choice but to swallow his pride. He went out into the fields during the day to earn labor points, and at night he came back to haul water, chop wood, cook, and do laundry. This kind of life, I endured it for 5 whole years in my past life. But in this one, my parents didn't even last 5 months before they were crying in their hearts, full of regret. Dad said Lily was just dead weight. He had hoped bringing her to the farm meant she would care for them, cook, wash clothes, and fetch water. But Lily had been sickly the whole way there, and once they arrived, she immediately fell seriously ill. Not only was she unable to help, she now had to be pampered and looked after. In his letter, Dad wrote that he and Mom were getting too old and couldn't take care of Lily anymore. They decided to get a doctor's note and send her back to the city for treatment. But the house we used to live in had already been reclaimed by his old work unit, so Lily would have to stay in my home. Mom also wrote that the marriage with the Hahn family was originally Lily's to begin with. Now that she was practically dying on the farm because she had suffered on my behalf, if I had even a shred of conscience, I should immediately bring her back and let her recover in comfort at the Hahn family home. Good food, clean bed, full rest. In the letter, she also subtly asked whether Samuel and I had consummated our marriage. If we hadn't, she hoped I'd return the marriage to Lily. That way, Lily could stay in the city, live in the military compound, and get proper care. As for me, it would be best if I divorced Samuel and went to the farm to reunite with them, and that way I could also take care of them in the future. I laughed out loud after reading that. Without a second thought, I tossed the letter, along with the envelope that had the return address, straight into the stove. The roaring flames quickly turned those thin sheets of paper into ash. Samuel looked at me with concern, asking gently, "Are you sure you don't want to write back to your parents?" I shook my head. They already publicly severed ties with me in the newspaper. Besides, we've been relocated too. If the authorities discover that our families are still communicating, it could bring trouble, not just for them, but also for your parents. Hearing that, even my in-laws, who had originally disapproved of me burning the letter, nodded in agreement. Afraid I'd be upset, Samuel took the afternoon off and went to the shore, digging up a big tub of oysters and gathering a whole basket of seaweed. Mother-in-law brought out a sugar coupon and exchanged it at the production team leader's house for 3 pounds of mixed grain flour. That evening, my in-laws cooked with their own hands, Samuel helped, and I was in charge of keeping the fire going. As a family, we worked together to make a big batch of dumplings stuffed with oysters and seaweed. As I sat there eating the steaming hot dumplings, the warmth and scent filled the air and stung my eyes. They were so good, so delicious. And then it hit me. Today was my father's birthday. In my past life, it had been this exact day. I'd secretly saved money for a whole month to celebrate his birthday. After finishing work each day, when everyone else went home to rest, I climbed the mountain to collect withered summer herbs. I was covered in mosquito bites, not a single patch of unbroken skin left. I dried the herbs and sold them at the supply co-op. 1 pound earned 2 cents. After a long time, I finally scraped together 20 cents. Just enough to buy 1 pound of white flour so I could make Dad a bowl of longevity noodles. But when he saw that bowl of noodles, he flew into a rage and yelled at me for being cold-blooded and heartless. Not worthy of being his daughter, that's what he said. And Mom, wiping away her tears, questioned me bitterly. "Do you think that just because your sister is gone, you're now our only child? That we have no choice but to rely on you for everything?" She glared at me. "Let me tell you something, Abby Yao. Don't talk to me about a bowl of noodles. Even if you cut the flesh off your own body and boiled it into soup for your father, it still wouldn't make up for the sin of you killing your sister." I shook my head desperately, practically ready to drop to my knees and swear that I had never tried to take Lily's place, that I didn't feel the slightest joy over her death. But they didn't believe me. Dad kicked me hard into the corner of the wall. The pain was sharp and overwhelming, curling my whole body into itself. Mom rushed over and grabbed my hair, using all her strength to slap me across the face, again and again. I had spent an entire month sleeping only 4 hours a night, just to save enough money to make that bowl of longevity noodles. I was exhausted and starving. Her slaps sent stars spinning through my eyes, and I passed out on the floor. When I came to in the middle of the night and crawled up from the ground, the bowl of noodles was already gone. Mom and Dad had eaten every last bite, not even leaving me a drop of broth. All that was left for me was a table full of dirty dishes to clean. This time around, they had their beloved eldest daughter by their side. I figured Dad's birthday this year must have been a happy one. Time passed in a blur, and in the blink of an eye, more than half a year had gone by. Maybe it was because I never wrote back, but I didn't receive another letter from Mom, Dad, or Lily. And honestly, that was just as well. After all, in my past life, they regretted to their dying breath not keeping Lily with them and taking her down to the countryside. This time, I gave them exactly what they wanted. Lily went with them, and I, the daughter they never really loved, was finally out of their lives. My belly was growing larger by the day, and the due date was getting close. Mother-in-law took apart an old padded jacket and pulled out 50 yuan from inside. She gave 20 yuan to Samuel so he could go to the commune to buy 10 pounds of flour, 10 pounds of noodles, and several pounds of brown sugar, which I'd need for postpartum recovery. Then she used another 10 yuan to buy 2 laying hens and 100 eggs from a villager, again, all for my recovery. Finally, she handed 5 yuan to father-in-law so he could treat the village officials to a meal at the state-run restaurant. The village chief promised that when the baby came, we could borrow the village tractor to take me to the hospital. What I didn't expect was that my in-laws had decided to spend money to send me to the county hospital to give birth. A few days later, I delivered a healthy pair of twins, a boy and a girl. My in-laws were overjoyed, each of them cradling a baby and refusing to let go. Samuel was grinning like a fool. When he saw how pale I looked, he immediately made a huge bowl of hot, sweet brown sugar water and spoon-fed it to me bit by bit. Maybe it was true that these children were little lucky stars for the Han family, or maybe my rebirth really had changed the fate of us all. Right after the twins turned 1, the results of the investigation into father-in-law and Samuel came out. Our family was finally allowed to return to the city. Both father-in-law and Samuel were reinstated to their original positions. Even the apartment in the family housing complex that had been reclaimed by the unit was returned to us. While mother-in-law and I were busy cleaning and settling back in, someone unexpected appeared at our doorstep. The guard stationed at the gate looked troubled as he approached me. "Sister-in-law, there's a woman at the gate who insists she's your mother, but she doesn't have any introduction papers, and honestly, she looks half crazy. Should I call the police?" I followed him out to the gate and saw someone I could barely recognize. My mother. The same woman who had once been elegant, well-dressed, dignified. Now she was disheveled, her hair a mess, her skin sallow and dirty. She looked like a beggar. As soon as she saw me, she rushed forward, hysterical. "Abby! Abby! Thank God, I finally found you. Please, come with me, we have to save your sister." I stared at her in disbelief. "What happened to Lily? Didn't she go down with you and Dad?" In her rambling and broken explanation, I pieced together what had happened. After her rebirth, Lily thought her golden finger, her future knowledge, could help our parents avoid being sent down again, and she could remain the pampered daughter of a high-ranking official. But she didn't count on the fact that Dad was so used to sitting in a position of power that he refused to lower himself to beg for help or pull strings. This time, the labor farm they were assigned to was even harsher than the one in our previous life. Lily was lazy and soft, afraid of hardship. She started faking illness before they even arrived. Once at the farm, she never got out of bed. She just laid there, day after day, waiting for Mom and Dad to serve her like before. At first, they doted on her, even begged around to find her some better food. But everything changed the day Dad slipped and fell hard while shoveling manure in the pigsty. He was carried back to the house just in time to see Lily, who was supposed to be bedridden and sick, was actually sitting at the doorway, cracking sunflower seeds and leisurely watching the commotion unfold. The non-stop physical labor and mental torment had already driven my father to the edge of a breakdown. Lily's deception became the final straw. That night, everything exploded. Dad and Lily completely tore each other apart. He grabbed her by the hair and slapped her hard, over a dozen times. Lily struggled wildly, cursing at him without a filter. She called him useless, said that even with the advantage of being reborn, he still ended up being sent down to the farm just like in the last life. She screamed that he had dragged her down too, made her suffer, and if she had known he was this worthless, she would have married into the Han family instead of going down with him. That cut deep. It hit every nerve my dad had. After that day, he was like a different person. He started yelling at Lily constantly, beating her whenever she refused to work. He forced her into the fields, made her shovel pig manure, and Lily began to look at him with pure resentment. Then Dad's birthday came around. Coincidentally, it was the same day I had secretly saved for an entire month in our past life just to make him a bowl of longevity noodles, complete with 2 poached eggs. But in this life, since he chose to bring Lily with him, he didn't get anything like that. Lily had no money on her, and even if she did, she would have spent it all on herself. So on Dad's birthday, all he got was a cloudy bowl of sweet water boiled from wild grass roots. Mom would later realize that Lily chose that specific root because it was free and also because the water it produced was cloudy, making it easier to hide poison. Dad died on his 50th birthday. Poisoned by rat poison, put there by his own daughter. Back at the housing complex gate, my mom was still going on and on, trying to defend Lily. "This wasn't all your father's fault either," she muttered. "He kept beating her, yelling at her. Lily was desperate. She wasn't thinking clearly when she put that poison in. Now your father's already gone. We can't let anything happen to your sister too. Abby, please, I'm begging you. I heard the Han family has been cleared. Your father-in-law is in a powerful position now. If he just makes a phone call and says it was accidental, the authorities won't investigate. And if our family doesn't press charges either, Lily can come home." I looked at her, my voice calm and steady. "And then what, after she comes home? Are you going to say again that this marriage with the Han family was always meant for her? That now she's back, I should give it up?" For a brief second I saw guilt flash across her face. She quickly tried to explain. No, that was all nonsense I said before. I heard you gave birth to twins for Samuel, and you two are clearly very close. I would never try to split you up now." Then she hesitated, before adding, "But Abby, you yourself said this engagement was originally your sister's. If she hadn't given Samuel up to you, you'd still be suffering with us at the farm. You wouldn't have this good life. You owe her. You really should beg Samuel and your father-in-law to help bring her back. It's the least you can do." Just then, Samuel could no longer hold back. He stepped forward, took my hand in his, and stared seriously at my mother. "Mother-in-law, what do you mean this marriage was always supposed to be with Lily? Back then, when I asked my parents to send someone to your home to propose, it was for Abby." "What?" I looked up at him, stunned, my mind blank. As his words sank in, I saw a flicker of panic cross Mom's face. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "My parents told me when your family came with the proposal, they said they didn't care which daughter it was, as long as it was a Yao girl. They believed in doing things by age, so they gave Lily the marriage first." I said it right out loud, the truth behind how our two families had been engaged. Mom instantly looked flustered, fumbling to find an explanation. But before she could speak, Samuel said firmly, "That's impossible. Abby, do you remember? 5 years ago, your school visited the army base for a hardship experience. No one in your class could eat the food there. It was you who came up with the idea to pick reed leaves, wrap the rough rice inside, steam them like zongzi dumplings. Everyone was fighting over the food that day. And that was the moment I noticed you. I thought, what a hard-working, clever girl. If only she could be my wife. But when I asked someone to go to your house and propose, they came back and said your parents had already arranged your marriage. They said your older sister hadn't been promised to anyone yet, and asked if we could switch." Boom. It was like a thunderclap exploded in my head. So that's what happened. No wonder in my past life, after Lily married Han Samuel, the two of them were never truly happy. No wonder that right after Lily married into the Han family, my parents rushed to send me off to the countryside. They were afraid that if I ever saw Samuel, their lives would come crumbling down. Seeing that all of their schemes had been exposed, my mom had nothing more to say. She didn't even try to plead with me again, just slunk away in shame. A few days later, Lily's sentencing came through. As expected, she was found guilty of poisoning and murder. The death penalty. Before her execution, she asked the prison guards to call our residential compound. She wanted to see me one last time. I agreed, curious what she could possibly have left to say. As soon as she saw me, her eyes turned bloodshot with rage, glaring at me with deep hatred. "Abby Yao, how did it come to this? In our last life, didn't you and our parents go to the farm and enjoy life? Why is it that now, after I went with them, everything changed? And what about the Han family? Weren't they supposed to be sent down to the most remote, bitterly cold borderland farm? Why did they get to stay in some fishing village? Was this all you're doing?" I looked at her with pity. "Lily, did you ever consider that nothing actually changed at all? In our last life, I went through everything you did. I suffered on the farm too, just like you. The only reason Mom and Dad didn't suffer back then was because I was the one carrying the burden for them. And now, in this life, you've been the one at their side for all those years. What exactly did you do for them? Can you even say it out loud?" There was a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but it quickly twisted into fury. "So what if I didn't help them? Don't forget, if I hadn't handed over the Han marriage to you, you would have been the one suffering in the countryside, right now." I let out a cold laugh. "You've told that lie so many times, you've actually started to believe it. Well then, let me tell you the truth. Samuel is the one who brought me here today. He's outside right now. Do you dare say to his face that this marriage was yours to give away?" As soon as she heard that Samuel was outside, her face turned ghostly pale. Her lips trembled, and she shook her head in disbelief. "No, it can't be. If he knows I switched the engagement, he'll never help me now." She looked up at me, her eyes full of desperate hatred, and screamed, "Why? Why you, Abby Yao? You're nothing but the daughter our parents never liked. Why should a man like Han Samuel belong to you?" Then her voice dropped to a cruel sneer. "You think you're so lucky. But let me tell you, Mom and Dad loved me most. All I had to do was casually say how jealous I was that you got to marry such a good man, and they gave the engagement to me. So don't get cocky. You better get me out of here, or I'll tell Mom you let me die. Let's see if she forgives you then." I shook my head slowly, meeting her eyes. "You forgot, Lily. I already severed ties with you and our parents in the newspaper. You're nothing but a stranger to me now. Whether she forgives you or not, I honestly don't care." With that, I turned and walked away. Behind me, Lily's voice erupted into hysterical, hateful curses full of rage and desperation. I later heard that the execution had been carried out. Lily was dead. After Dad's death, with no one to support her, Mom remarried quickly, to a farmhand who drove an ox cart. He was violent, and whenever he got drunk, he'd beat her without mercy. She tried to run back to me, hoping for help, but the farmhand caught up with her on the road. He beat her to death. When we received the call from the labor farm, Samuel and I went together to retrieve her ashes. We buried her alongside Dad and Lily. They had favored Lily for 2 lifetimes. Being buried next to her after death, maybe that was all they had ever really wanted. As for me, in this life, I finally had a family that truly loved me. I had Samuel, who cared for me deeply, and I had 2 smart, adorable children. This time, I no longer wasted my heart chasing the kind of family love that was never mine to begin with. Because real love doesn't need to be